April 28th meeting of the WDIC meeting. Thank you all for coming. And the first order of business is to welcome introductions and announcements. I think, well, no, everyone does not know each other. So why don't we go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Henry Grandison. I'm the chair of the WDIC. I'm also legislature. And I'll go and call on people. Rachel Graham.
Hi, I'm Rachel Graham. I am vice chair of WDIC and an employee of the county clerk's office.
Okay. Larry Roberts.
I'm Larry Roberts. I'm a member of the WDIC, and I've been around county government for 25 years.
Okay. Lisa Holmes.
Larry's been hanging out with the likes of us for 25 years. I'm Lisa Holmes, Deputy County Administrator and WDIC member.
Okay. Kate Shanks Booth. You're mute. You're on mute, Kate.
It's been one of those days of all week. It's been one of those days. So I'm Kate Shanks Booth. I'm the director of Tompkins County Youth Services Department and also a WDIC member.
Okay. Ruby William.
All right, Ruby Pulliam, Commissioner of Human Resources.
Amy Hendricks.
Amy Hendricks, Deputy County Administrator.
Okay. Katrina McCloy.
I'm Katrina McCoy. I'm Deputy Clerk of the Legislature.
Okay. Amy, I won't try to pronounce your last name.
Thanks. It's not bad if you break up the alphabets in fourth. So hi everyone, my name is Amy Kwo Somjamavong, and I'm with the Ithaca Asian American Association. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation.
Ann Corman.
Hi, I'm Ann Corman, Tompkins County Legislator for the town of Ulysses and part of the towns of Enfield and Ithaca, and a member of WDIC.
Reverend Ken Clark.
Ken Clark, Director, Office of Human Rights.
Rob Brown.
Hi there, I'm Rob Brown, member WDIC.
Kip Kephart.
Hi, I'm Kit Kephart. I'm the commissioner at the Department of Social Services and a member of WDIC.
And Deanna Carritas. Deanna.
Oh, looks like she may be frozen.
Okay. She got off. Well, I'll try Brittany, and then we'll get back to Deanna.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I am one of the deputy clerks here in the legislature.
Okay. Well, when Deanna comes back, we have to introduce ourselves. But are there any announcements that people have regarding what's going on for the last 2 months? Okay, I just want to mention the Derek Chauvin or George Floyd verdict that came out last week, but also the shootings in Columbus, Ohio, the shooting in shooting in Elizabethtown, North Carolina, the death of the person who's had their who's allegedly the cops did not detail, that they leaned on him with their knees in California. And so I just want to say that the Derek Chauvin trial being over for now, we still have lots to go to make everybody safe in this community. And so with that, I will introduce Deanna Carruthers.
Oh, Deanna Carruthers, Chief Equity and Diversity Officer. I have having internet connections problems.
Yes, we noticed. Well, if no one has any announcements, any other announcements?
I was going to save this for my report, but tomorrow our office is offering a program in commemoration of Fair Housing Month. Was co-sponsoring it with CNY Fair Housing. It's from noon to 1. I sent out a notice about this last week called Emerging Changes in Fair Housing, and these will address mostly federal and state policy changes, which also include the re-establishment of affirmatively furthering fair housing as a principle for fair housing by the federal government by way of HUD, as well as a disparate impact. As we know, both of these key features of fair housing enforcement were undermined by the prior administration. And now the Biden administration is bringing those back, and we'll be discussing that and some other changes in relation to fair housing tomorrow.
And that's on YouTube, right? The Tompkins County YouTube?
Yeah. No, this is actually going to be, this would be on the announcement. It's going to be a Zoom link that can be accessed, but it won't be on the Tompkins County YouTube. That was with the announcement. If you don't have that, I can send it to you.
Oh, I have that. I just assumed it was going to be on there. So if people wanted that link that then they didn't get it, how would they get that? Like somebody from the community?
Well, oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Is it on your website? Is it on the front page of the county website?
It's not on the front page of the county website, but if someone wants to attend it, I can send them the link to it.
Why don't you put the link? Why don't you put the link in chat? If you could do that.
I could do that.
Okay.
Let's see.
And next on the agenda is the Ithaca Asian American Proclamation, which I will have to share my screen and put it up. Okay, Amy, why don't you give us a little more information about the proclamation?
Sure. So thanks to Henry actually for reaching out to kind of remind us about the proclamation, and with the upcoming month, the month of May is designated as the Asian Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. And so the proclamation actually, it also, the county has also proclaimed last year as well. And so this is the second year. And I'm not sure if I need to go through the content, but in terms of a little history, or in terms of how it started recognized as a Heritage Month, it's on the first whereas. And so that kind of gives a little history of how it got started and recognizing the month of May and the reason why May was recognized. And so nationally, you will see in various communities and various states, especially with a large Asian Pacific Islander American population, that you will see a lot of activities, a lot of events happening during the month of May. And so it is recognizing the diversity of folks that identifies as Asian or Asian American or Pacific Islanders, and recognizing that it has a long history. It's part of the American history, that it's not just simply an immigrant history. And so it is within the fabric of American society. And so the proclamation that we have put together, we also have, taken the from former President Obama, the proclamation to help us also construct the narrative of this proclamation for this year. So in the end, we asked the month of May as the Asian Pacific Islander American Heritage Month in Tompkins County, and also joined together with the county in addressing some of the issues, challenges that actually, as you already heard, the rise of anti-Asian violence, and also, but continuing working on the structural racism in our society, in the county, and how can we work collaboratively together. And so that's kind of the spirit of the proclamation. Henry, if there's anything else that you would like me to address or mentioned,
Yes, I guess I'd like to maybe have you also talk about the event that you're doing with Ken Clark about, oh, just a second. Larry, do you have a question?
Where in the proclamation does it address the current rise of violence against Asian American and Pacific Islanders? And if it doesn't, where should we put that? What kind of language should we use?
It addresses it in the, I cannot tell exactly, but addresses it in the paragraph, whereas Asian Americans have endured and overcome hardship and heartache.
Yeah, but it doesn't address the current situation.
Yeah, no, Larry, thank you for bringing that up. So folks and I have actually talked about this in terms of how to construct this year's proclamation. And last year when we were constructing it as well, there was a similar conversation came up because it's also resulted from some of the incidents that happened literally in our backyard at our home, where a lot of the anti-Asian harassments and assaults and that were happening in Tompkins County. Right. And so, which is resident. So, so we were struggling in a way because that is a Heritage Month celebration. It's more a celebration, and so we didn't want it to be the reason why we do have the county to do the proclamation is because of these pains and these violence has been happening. And so, that's the reason why we didn't kind of directly address it, but I'm hoping that some of the events and efforts that IAAA is launching could help address that. Address it. We have decided to take on the route of addressing it in a way that that is not a damage center approach, that is more on the positive side. So if I may, I see that Rob has the hands up, so maybe I can hold off and help answer that, Larry, if that's okay, to share with that. So so we were toying with that and how to make that balance. Is but importantly for us was for folks to see the history that this is the violence that has been increased toward Asian Americans. It's a structural issue. It's historically constructed, and that it's not just a recent incident.
Right.
Rob?
I hope that satisfies halfway of your comment, Larry. And then, allow me to share that the other half later.
I just wondered if we could add a sentence in that paragraph that does talk about the Exclusion Act and other kinds of problems and the current, but if the American Asian American Association wants us to go with this as presented, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I'll keep mine really briefly because I was on the same track as Larry there, in that I entirely honor exactly the points and the rationales that Amy was explaining right there, and fully support them at the same time as I also remain committed to repudiating recent violence, scapegoating of our Asian and Pacific Islander neighbors for the COVID public health emergency and so forth. So regardless of which forms the repudiation of that behavior takes, I'm perfectly content to go with a more celebratory tone for the proclamation, because at the root of it all, celebrating our diversity is what we're all about.
Ann Corman?
I also wanted to say, that I'll defer to Amy and the association of what they want to have in this. Although I think it's important, at least in this committee and other meetings and times to recognize, the anti-Asian violence and harassment. If they're not wanting to have this in here, I respect that. Thank you.
Okay. Because I was also going to have Amy discuss the program that's coming up fairly soon that they are going to be putting on. So let me share that and have you discuss what's going on in the program world that you're doing.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you, Larry, and thank you, Rob, and thank you, Anne, for mentioning that and recognizing the anti-Asian violence that's been happening nationally, but also in New York State and locally as well. Oh, I just realized there's a typo on this poster, which I'm glad I only sent it to you, Henry. Okay. How embarrassing that is. So please excuse me for that. I guess I hope I'll take the excuse for staring at the monitor for too long to be able to make that corrections. So I will get you an updated version since we have made some changes to some of our as you all know, that the Ithaca Asian American Association, it's a nonprofit, but it's a community-based organization, but it's strictly volunteer-based. We have no paid staff, so we are doing everything we can and addressing issues that we hope eventually that we can work with everybody else not to have to address it. I mean, but in the round of today, a world with the heightened racism and heightened hate and the heightened violence that we just can't stand back. So besides the Dragon Boat program that Ithaca Asian American Association is very proud of, we are also launching this campaign, which we have shared with you last year. The virus has no nationality, which you'll see the graphic, and then and thanks to the county for supporting it. It is much appreciated to even having you to have access to that graphic and to be able to put it on your Facebook, put it on your Instagram, put it on your, on your office. And so just show that you are in solidarity with everyone, that, that virus, there's no place for race in the pandemic that we're facing right now. So we launched this, and what we are doing is that we are running an Instagram campaign, which is, we hope that you will follow us. The account is called "The Virus Has No Nationality." And so we hope that this is where we are working with college students, high school students, and older folks like me trying to learn Instagram. And I'm just, for folks, and then we also invite you to contribute to posting, contribute your own story to educate on people on your perspectives and your interpretation on the virus has no nationality. And so there's that. And also we're working with Reverend Kent Clark in the Office of Human Rights in promoting the bystander intervention to stop anti-Asian American harassment and xenophobia. So there is already a national workshops, which we encourage you all to attend. And that right after those sessions, we will be holding a 30 minutes debriefing to debrief, to check in, to see how can we see this apply in our own community. And so, so just imagine, because this anti-Asian violence or any violence that is racially motivated, or even you see it on other ism that happens, it is every single person's job. It's not just certain people's job to intervene. And so we ask you and that to be part of this intervention, to not just be a bystander, but really taking action to find ways that you can intervene at your own comfort level. And so at this intervention workshop, it will introduce the 5 Ds models, and then for you to decide what makes sense for you when you see an incident that happens. And so this is where we thought that this would be, since there's already a program out there, let's follow what's available and then go forward with that. And then for our community to try to figure out what makes sense. So I hope that you can help me imagine that, that everyone in this community goes through this training. That imagine the possibilities would look like if everyone goes through the bystander intervention and actually practice it. And so that might think about the anti-bullying effort in the school, even in workplaces and in public spaces, in festival grounds, on the festival grounds, so that when someone sees it, they felt that they are equipped to address that issue. And by doing that, taking that action, it's helping to educate and promote that this is not tolerable. So I ask you to help promote this. So the next one, I hope I did a good job that you might already register for May 20th and May 24th, and then also register for the debriefing sessions. The other one that we're working on is the inviting folks to submit a short video to be part of the film festival. And the timeline of this, I'm actually adjusting this, so I apologize. So that's another reason I'll be recreating this. We're actually going to shift this back a little bit so that give you more time, because we have heard from a few folks and also high school students that they feel like it's just too much. It's a little bit too quick, so they needed a little bit more time to submit. So we don't want to miss that population. So our film festival, anyone can make a video. And you probably have already done so using your phone, your home videos, or recording your own talk. You can make a beautiful film with just your phone. So don't think that you have to be a professional filmmaker, so that's the only one that can submit. But we really want to sort of make it participatory and open up to the public for people to submit the film that help us interpret what this virus has no nationality means. So my hope is that will be a bigger contribution to the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and especially around anti-racism, and our fight together around against white supremacy ideology. And lastly, I would just mention we're working with the Ithaca Mural Association to create murals with the graphic virus has no nationality. And we will start with Shortstop Deli, who had given us the permission to paint. And so we'll hope to kick that off in the month of May as well. In the meantime, we are seeking for approval from, if you have a power of persuasion, to Frost Travis, the Travis High. So we'd like to put a mural up that's up in College Town. That's the building. That building that connects, I'm not sure if that's connection is the right word, but connects to the Dryden Garage, if that makes sense. So as you're driving into the Dryden Garage, on your right, there's like pretty much an empty wall, and we're hoping that we can put that with some beautiful mural, graphic visual that's around the theme virus has no nationality, and celebrating the local Asians and Asian Americans here in Tompkins County. So I apologize if I took up too much time. So these are some of the efforts, our actual programmatic actions that we are taking in addressing this. And we invite you to support us, advocate for us, and give us a lending hand. If you want to come and help paint, please do. So this is all under that. I feel that it's not just the responsibility of Asian American community, but I hope that we see it that all of us are working together around anti-racism work.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. Do I have any questions? Anne, I assume your hand is up from before.
Yes, it is. But I did have a question. I don't want to look right now, but did we get an email with some of this information, or I didn't see this was in the agenda?
Yes,
in the agenda packet?
Yeah, it was in the agenda packet. It was sent out today, this morning.
Okay.
It was sent out. But I also believe that Dr. Clark has also sent out an email about this program too, right?
Okay, great.
You're on mute,
Yeah,
Dr.
thank you.
Clark?
It was sent out on Friday of last week.
Okay, I'll
about the May
definitely.
20th and 24th programs.
Okay, I'll definitely make sure I'll sign up for some of these programs today. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Larry?
I forget what the process is. Are we going to vote to support this proclamation, or will the legislature just vote on it as it is? I can't remember I think we voted on proclamations before, but I don't know if we do it all the time.
Yeah, we do vote on proclamations from this group.
So I would move that we, as the WDIC recommends to the legislature, that they adopt the proclamation as presented, celebrating the Heritage Month for Asian and Pacific Islander Americans.
I'll second that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Larry.
No, you can second it.
I'll second it.
Proclamation, okay, supported by, initially by Rob, seconded by Ann. Do I have a vote on it? Everyone show by raising their hands. Okay.
Do
Any
we don't
abstentions?
need, are you sure we don't need to do a roll call?
No, I don't think so.
No?
Any
Okay.
abstentions? Any noes? Okay, the motion carries anonymously. I also vote yes. And do we have any other questions to Amy? Okay. Well, thank
I
you
had
very-
one quick one, sorry. So for during May, when we present that, which legislative meeting did you say?
That will be the next legislative meeting
At the
on
next one?
May. Yes, the first week in May.
Okay, great.
It's
And
already
is-
on the calendar.
And Amy will be there to accept it or?
Yes,
to
well,
accept it?
I will.
Okay.
I would talk to Amy about accepting the award, accepting the proclamation too.
Okay. All right, great. Sounds perfect. Thank you for doing this.
Yep. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the minutes of February 24th. And I entertain a motion.
I'll
Larry-
move.
Moved by
move.
Larry, seconded by Lisa. Any discussion? Okay, let's have another hand raising vote on the minutes. Okay. Any abstentions, any denials? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. The next item is the committee goals, which we had put off from the February 24th meeting. I emailed people about 2 weeks ago about this. Unless there's any comments on the goals, I'm gonna, any discussion, I'm gonna just skip over them because they've been well worn and we'll just move ahead on them. Any discussions?
Henry, is it all right if I apologize? I have to log off and leave if that's.
Yes, yes,
I won't be staying.
yes, it's fine, Amy. Thank you. Thank you
All
for your
right,
time.
thank you. Sorry, I just have to go to another meeting. Thank you very
Nope.
much.
Oh, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, seeing no comments, let's move on to the report from our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, Diana Carreras, and she can introduce the report.
Thank you, Henry. For those of you who tune into the legislative meeting, I did this presentation about a week or so ago, and so I will make it as brief as I possibly can. But if you have any questions, I stand for those. And this was a request of just what's happening in my area. I'm a part of county administration. So first and foremost, just kind of people know where I reside in the organization. And so I gave this brief update and just what have I been doing since I got here. So can you see? Okay, before I get started, Ann, is one screen, two screens? How are we looking?
It is two.
Screens.
Okay, all right. Let's see.
Try not to give you a hard time every time.
It's okay. Is that better?
That's great. Well,
Okay.
it's actually too big, isn't it?
Yes, it's too big.
It's cut off somehow. Where the letters Tompkins, it says it starts with the letter M versus a T.
Well,
Do you need to call Dominic?
right.
I've never-
I'm like, where is Dominic?
I've never seen anybody do that before. That's very ingenious.
Well, I want you to know this is all I could do for you today. I have no idea why this is happening. I'm having lots of technical issues. Actually, IT came and helped me with my cameras and things yesterday, and now it's reverted back to
Maybe you
whatever.
can go back to two screens.
Okay. Okay. Winning. This is brilliant here today. Let me see what I can do. Let me try this. All right. Is that
Yes.
better?
That's better.
Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
Don't want to overwhelm you all with this. Okay, let's see how this goes. Okay, let's get started. So I started here, I was honored to accept the position as the first Chief Equity and Diversity Officer September 8th. And so this role is new to Tompkins County. And so took the position description, looked at what I could see there. And then also I started the process by just getting to know folks. And so again, I'll make this presentation brief and stand for questions. Is my slide going forward? Okay. Screen sharing is paused. Okay. Let's see. What else can happen here? Let's see what else we can have happen. You know what I mean? Let's see what else we can break while we're here.
That's good.
Is the slide advancing?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. It's like first COVID presentation. So the agenda is going to give you a brief overview of the role, the assessment that I did when I first started, some findings, accomplishments to date, being here a brief period of time, some action steps, support that I asked for from the legislature. But specifically, that slide is targeted around what also WDIC can do to be supportive, and then also I'll stand for questions. The role of Chief Equity and Diversity Officer is to model organizational values. I think there's no higher standard than we should be at making sure we're adhering to the standards of accountability, integrity, respect, and accountability. So, and equity. And so one of the things that I've done since I've been here is work to ensure the organization centers equity in the work. Then also the job is to assess organizational culture. There are things that happen nationwide, things that happen statewide, things that happen locally that influence the culture. I always remind people that we bring our lived experiences to work. And so for folks to think that we come to work and there's one person here and then there's another person somewhere else, that's too much work. And so all the things that are going well, that are not going well come to work, and those impact our organizational culture. One of the things I also do is work to identify and address structural, and say, again, we have systems set up that don't necessarily lead to the results that we'd like to have them happen on behalf of underrepresented folks. And then again, I address system issues. I provide an immediate response for employee concerns. And then also I lead the learning and unlearning process. I actually would like to attribute that statement particularly to Rachel Graham. Several months ago, when we were talking at Team Jedi, and she made a really profound statement. She said, we really have to work to learn to unlearn bad behaviors and bad habits. And so this Dr. Original quote is something that stuck with me, and I tried to carry through on all the conversations. System inequities didn't start overnight, and they won't end overnight. We all have to recognize our part and our role in terms of the outcomes that we receive. And so it's a part of our responsibility to do some of that work. And then also I develop and monitor equity-related performance measures. So what would we like to have see happen? Hopefully we don't get up every day as an organization and just come to work without any expectation. So again, monitoring those things for monitoring our goals to see where we'd like to be, but also establishing that baseline. Next. So when I first started, I did some assessment. I looked at policies, talked with department heads, including and deputies, and then also looked at a lot of the informal and formal equity-related processes and practices. A lot of things we do that lead to inequitable outcomes are more informal things. And then also some of our formalized processes, they're not centered around equity. So we receive those impact our organization. Also, I worked with Amy on the climate survey on the outcome. Actually, climate survey is already developed, but looking at the results of the climate survey and seeing what worked and what hasn't worked, and then also doing some work with some of the climate survey teams in support of the work she was leading. Community partners discussions, talked with lots of service providers along the way to ask about their interactions with Tompkins County. I reviewed the budget and then also looked at some of the workforce metrics we have from human resources and some of the other departments. Look at winning, just winning today with this PowerPoint. Then findings. So first thing was clarification in terms of the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer role. This is a structural role. I describe this job as being a mechanic. A lot of this work, I used the example of a Toyota Camry earlier. So I'm the person who's underneath the hood of the organization. So trying to get to the foundation of some of the systems issues that we have. And so you won't hear a lot, you won't see my face a whole lot, but you'll experience the impact of the work by some of the changes in terms of policy, process, and procedure. So for example, I've been working with Lisa on some of the policy compliance issues. Lisa is the lead for that, but I'm also part of the team. And so I will identify system or process inequities. And so sometimes things will be pulled back, or sometimes things will go advanced based upon some of that feedback. Then some of the other work that I found was we need to have improved data collection, tracking, and analysis. We don't have strong systems for that. So a lot of things are, here's an example. We've had folks say that they count the number of people of color here, as opposed to using our systems to tell us the information. We have folks who may not put information into systems consistently. And so that doesn't yield consistent results. And so a lot of times when I'll ask for data, one of the things I'll have is you need to call this person, you have to call this person, you have to call another person. And so we really should have a synchronized system that collects a lot of our metrics. And then also some things we're not capable of tracking at this time that we should be tracking. We have an inconsistent organizational vocabulary. There are myriad definitions that you find out in the world of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And so what I hear is a lot of people use the language or they use the lingo, but there are a lot of misapplication there. I would say education does not equal inclusion or cultural competence. One of the things that I heard from being in the Midwest when I first got here is how educated the community is. I don't doubt that for 1 second, but that has not translated into equitable goals or equitable outcomes in our community. So while I applaud the education, that's not led to the results that we would like to have. And so I think that we have to continue to push the envelope on what education actually means in terms of education. That does not mean a bachelor, doesn't mean a master's, doesn't mean a PhD, doesn't mean a JD, any of those things. I have several of those. My degrees didn't get me any of those things. It was my lived experience and my specialized training and the time that I spent diving into the soil of the work. So then inadequate applied learning opportunities. I found that we have a lot of passionate folks who really want to do work here, but they don't have experience working with folks with lived experiences from a minoritized groups. And so a lot of times we'll do training after training after training, but then there's no application of the work. And so we are very well trained. We have lots of books, lots of workshops, lots of things that are available. But that doesn't necessarily translate to the experience in terms of the outcomes. And then, so that's led to some inequitable systems, processes, and things that we have in our organization. And so, and again, you could find these things or these results in many organizations. But these are things that I have identified over the last 8 months. Accomplishments. So I'll keep this section brief. It's only been over 8 months. And so I will say that I've done a lot, but I haven't done a lot. I'll say it that way. So I've established organizational expectations for leaders in terms of communications. One of the things that I did in terms of hitting the ground running was making sure I talked to all department heads and leaders. The reason why that's important is because we have to have authentic and truthful conversations. Otherwise, this work doesn't exist. We can't actually make system change without that shared understanding around the work. I've established the structure for Team Jedi. We have several folks who are on here from Team Jedi, and so they think I'm doing a bad job at it. You can also call them out and let them give you some feedback on the work there as well. We also increased our participation in the Tompkins County Diversity Consortium, and then assumed leadership of the Government Alliance for Racial Equity. I supported the development of centering equity in the Tompkins County values, and then I collaborated with folks from the EOC and particularly the communications team to establish office hours in response for the COVID response. In addition, I worked with Cornell, Ithaca College, and other folks in the community to host the BIPOC virtual networking event that had been hosted in person. And so with the pandemic, folks hadn't been able to get together. So I was asked to be a part of that. Or actually I was volunteered, but then I was asked to support the process. Then also I actually partnered with Henry, Leslin, and actually JR is not here on the Tompkins County Black History Month event. And so that was a good representation or a good showing on behalf of the county, because the county was identified as the featured organization based upon a lot of the work and a lot of the news and the press that's been received recently. I served as a project manager for the Reimagining Public Safety Report. We've had numerous updates about that work, and so I will go past that in this update here in the interest of time. And I've conducted listening and debriefing sessions. We did listening debriefing sessions as of this week. I collaborated with Dr. Clark on the community forum that was hosted Monday night for the community. We also had listening debriefing sessions in our workforce both Friday and Monday this week around the show and verdict. Reason why that's important, again, those cultures, those beliefs, those shared values are critical to our work here. And so understanding where folks are, how they're doing and how they're experiencing work is vitally important. And so we had those discussions, and feedback that I received is that they really appreciated the safe space to have those conversations. They'd like to have many more. And then I've addressed multiple employee concerns in terms of equity in the workplace, get complaints from racial discrimination to workplace harassment to they're having a hard time in my environment, struggling with COVID. So myriad things that occur. We I triangulate those things with Lisa and Ruby. And so that there is some independence and autonomy, but also at the same time, there are checks and balances in our system to work some of those things. Then I also have done several communications. Recently, I did a presentation on equity in healthcare with the Medical Society. And then also I'm doing some work with SEPA. I've been asked to serve as their contact expert as they review the executive exchange statement this year. And so I'll be working on that student project as well. And then also be doing some work in terms of volunteering for a floor house coming up in the fall. So lots of work there and lots of good work to go forward. So where are we headed? We are developed a strategic diversity plan through the Workforce Diversity Inclusion Committee. So launching that effort in the next month or so around the plan, and that'll also include the diversity statement. We have a draft of the diversity statement that I need to reconvene the committee on. Right now, a part of the equity work, it has to sit with you and you have to feel like you have ownership, and also not just ownership, but ownership from everyone, making sure it's an inclusive statement. So just kind of mulling those things over before it's sent out to the group. And so plan to have that back to this committee sometime in the fall, but again, getting regular updates around that, and then hopefully having that plan adopted by the end of the year. Operationalized Team Jedi, we met on Monday, and they actually spent, in addition to the other listening and debriefing session, that team meeting actually turned into a listening and debriefing session because they talked about the verdict for about 90 minutes as well. And so they had a lot on their hearts and minds related to that. They've developed 5 subcommittees and they've submitted their goals. Some of them are process related goals, and then others are around some of the Heritage Month work here. And thank you, Henry, for your work on that as well, sending information. So now they're in the process of compiling those lists and bringing it back to WDIC. Then developing a decision-making matrix for equity and decision-making. I'll be collaborating with Amy on that as well as we roll out the values. And then also the GEAR model also has an equity and decision-making tool that we'll be doing some of that work to implement that work here. And then in addition to that, we'll also decision-making matrix around when to engage my position. Again, I jokingly, people thought that I was a recruiter. When I first started, I said I would work structurally with HR to look at their strategy. However, we have Larry Workman, who's very, very capable. He is in that job. That is not my job. So, but then also developing an implementation of culturally responsive training. I've heard a lot about the LGBTQ training that was hosted a couple of years ago. And folks are hungry for more training and more engagement. And so working with WDIC to do some of that work. I sent a preliminary budget to Henry just for consideration. And again, nothing is formal or finalized. Again, it's whatever the group decides to do with the funding that you have. And so just making sure that there are resources for that. And then also I have made a request to County Administrator Molino saying we'll need some additional funds to do these things if we're going to do them as robustly as possible. And then I appreciate his comments around the training budget yesterday in the budget retreat, because some of those funds will be requested to do some work here for sure, because we need a lot of money. So next thing is collaborate with the compliance team and human resources to conduct organizational policy reviews. Again, I thank Lisa and Ruby for being invaluable teammates. Lisa says that we're a member of the Justice League. We're still trying to figure out what our roles, responsibilities are for the Justice League. And so they have been invaluable. And I think the synergy that is there with that work is yielding better outcomes in terms of our policy discussions. Raising community awareness of DEIJ efforts at Tompkins County in collaboration with the Office of Human Resources. That has to do with the work of GEAR. I'm also a part of Local Leaders of Color, the Diversity Consortium of Tompkins County, participating in Community Leaders of Color. NACO is launching a Chief Diversity Officers group this Friday, or initial discussion, so I'll be a part of that as well. Making sure that while this is an internally functioning position primarily, but it's internal and external, right? So there's no way that we shouldn't be telling the story of what we're trying to do at Tompkins County, and also making sure that we get credit for what we're doing, but at the same time acknowledging we have a long ways to go. So trying to make sure we get those stories out. And also one of the goals I have this year is to do a publication or two around our journey in this space so that we can get the word out as well. Support department work plans. And so all the department heads were asked to submit their work plans for the year. So I helped Jason with that communication to center equity and gave him some ideas for goals they could present in their departments. And so I have all of the goals, and I'll be creating an analysis for the leader or the county administrator to say, these are what the department said. These are how do we center equity in the goals across the departments. And Ruby and I will be going on a tour of the different departments, but having conversations around all of those goals. Again, because we know this is the first year of those conversations. So this will take years to get done, but also knowing that we're paying attention to what they submit, but then also how do we get there? And then in a perfect world, when we get there, we will tie these to the results-based accountability work as well at some point. Then also, I support the implementation of the reimagining public safety recommendations. And so we'll be bringing back a plan to Public Safety Committee on May 20th to be approved by June 1st and 2nd by the Common Council and Legislature on the CJC recommendation. So support from WDIC. What do I need from you? And so people, actually, I got a lot of feedback on this slide because people seem surprised that I asked for something or what we should do. And I said, well, this belongs to all of us. So diversity, inequity, inclusion, and justice work didn't start because Deanna Carruthers came here. It was already going on, which has led to the ramp up of the work. And it won't leave and it won't end when I die. So we all need to get on board, get to work, put your track shoes on, and let's get to moving. So how can we do that? So support the ongoing review and implementation of the workforce diversity and inclusion policy across the organization. We have a very descriptive policy that says what we agreed to and how we should be functioning. And so we need to be triangulating that policy throughout WDI, throughout this committee to make sure that we are meeting those values. And also that creates checks and balances across the work. And then supporting the rollout of the Tompkins County values. I know that Amy's leading that work, but then the adoption of the revised diversity statement that comes right after that, and the implementation of the diversity strategic plan. And if you don't like something, I want you to speak up. I don't want it to, I want you to say, hey, this is what we need to do, because again, this is an interactive engagement that we all need to be a part of. And then incorporating, align, and promote equity-based decision-making in legislative processes. So all of the committees at Tompkins County have a role in supporting equity. However, I see this committee as leading the charge in that space. And so encouraging your peers, legislators specifically in this work, but then also supporting the other folks from the community around the work. And so when things come up, let's make sure we're encouraging to center equity in the work. And what does that mean? Also, if there are trainings and things that need to be done around the work, we want to be there for them. And then provide recommendations on investment of resources to promote equity and service delivery. Again, I jokingly said to Jason all the time, he says, how much money do you need? I said, well, if we're really centering equity, the entire budget should be based upon an equitable distribution. And for a while, Jason has his red hair. I think it was turning white when I would say it, but the longer I'm here, the better he's responded to that. And that's truthful, because if equity is about access and equity is about fairness, that should not be a novel idea. It shouldn't scare anybody. Everybody should want that. And so as I wrap up, I appreciate being this committee that I can lean on. I appreciate you guys being my home within the space of the work, but that's what I've been doing for the last 8 months. And then I appreciate Henry for calling me and asking me, what are you doing? So we've had the conversation, and what are you up to? And so I think that I've given him more than an earful on multiple occasions about what I'm doing. And so again, I appreciate this space to provide this information. With that, I stand for questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Deanna? With that short little presentation. Claire Roberts.
There was something back on one of the beginning slides about responding to employee concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what that means? Like, are people complaining about unjust treatment? Are people wanting training? What are people exactly bringing to your attention?
Sure. So first, I always want to say is I'm going to answer your question, but I also want to acknowledge that we're a public space, and that I hold all the information we receive confidential. But to answer your question, all of the above, everything that you said, I've received a complaint in terms of how folks feel like they're treated, but also the question is, how do I respond? So what do I need? What do I need in terms of the tools to be successful? So doing a lot of one-on-ones, but then also anybody who knows that they're in a space with me, you're going to get a job because I'm at work, so you're going to be at work. And so a lot of times when we have emails with me or something like that, we always have action steps for follow-up. And so it's not just the initial complaint that comes. The complaint is just the start of the process. You're not going to complain to the chief equity diversity officer and think nothing's going to happen. You're going to get a response within 24 to 48 hours. And then from there, we have a series of meetings or follow-up emails with the department. The employee also looking at policy and how whether our policy has a gap there, because in certain cases, some things will come up. We're like, we've never had that before. Or we need to look at this differently. And so I make sure I bring a lot of those things to Jason and say, hey, how do we strengthen those things? One of the reasons why Lisa, Ruby, and I work so closely is because of things that come up along the way. I'll say, hey, can I jump in on this policy discussion? Or hey, can I be here? And we realize as a unit, we're stronger together in terms of triangulating things. And then also, Lisa's the compliance officer, Ruby's the HR director. And with my role, people can submit complaints or ask questions from either all three of us. So sometimes in terms of just cohesion, we'll have maybe the same or different folks come and talk to us. And so it works as a good system. And so I treat these like an emergency response because nobody wants you to feel hurt or anything like that. So I try to respond immediately and very, very robustly so that we can retain the employees we have. Because if the ultimate goal is retention in terms of the behaviors and the values we have, we need to respond to those as if they're an emergency.
Okay. Any other questions?
No complaints that I talked too fast today? Okay.
Evidently not.
Deborah Dawson's not here.
To more putting on the work boots.
Okay. Well, thank you, Deanna, for that short summary of what you do. And next, why don't we move to reports from the various agencies, and we'll start with Reverend Clark about Office of Human Rights.
Okay, I'm gonna, in the next just several minutes, I'm gonna talk about some of what's going on with us. One of the things that's happened over this month in April, that we have seen an uptick in inquiries, probably the most significant bump we've seen since the pandemic began. We went from 23 inquiries in February to 38 in March. And now, as of today, with 2 days to go in the month, 64 inquiries. I would attribute that bump up to 16 inquiries we received under the public safety category, which is it basically was an unusual number of calls from inmates at the Tompkins County Jail. And in response to their concerns, I encouraged them to use the inmate grievance process that is established by New York state law, as I was advised by Captain Ray Bunch of the Sheriff's Office. I will be meeting with him in this regard and just to get some further perspective and clarity on these things. But a number of the things that they were concerned about were things that really needed to be addressed through that process. But we've also seen an uptick in housing inquiries. We've had 20 so far, and we've had 7 inquiries in relation to employment. Now, all of those have not resulted in the filing of a complaint. Some of those we did encourage people to file complaints. In other cases, we referred them to other agencies that could address their concerns more directly, and as their concerns not really fall within the category of discrimination based on any of the protected categories in the New York State human rights law. But that has been one of the interesting realities that we've seen, this sort of uptick in inquiries. We have been involved in either planning or implementing a number of programs over the last month. On April 22nd, we were part of a program called the Journey of Fair Housing, Source of Income Discrimination. This was an initiative that was started by the New York State Division of Human Rights as they sought to partner with human rights offices or commissions, as they're typically called in the state. Our commission, of course, is the advisory board to our office. But they've partnered with commissions in different regions of the state, along with other related agencies, to do a focus on fair housing, as this is Fair Housing Month. And so this program that we had last Thursday was co-sponsored by OHR, CNY Fair Housing, our partner agency based in Syracuse, a Buffalo organization called Housing Opportunities Made Equal, and the Buffalo Human Rights Commission. And so that happened on last Thursday. And it was focused, the program was focused on source of income discrimination. Our office to date has not received any complaints related to source of income, and we attributed that to several reasons. One, or we surmised that several reasons may factor in that lack of reporting. One having to do with the price of fair housing, price of housing rather, in Ithaca. Another having to do with the fact that housing is such that the lack of affordable housing, which is not a fair housing impediment in and of itself, nonetheless creates these market conditions that have a disparate impact on people belonging to groups protected under fair housing law, and those in particular who use vouchers, and other factors as well. However, we are aware that just because we have not had it reported to office, that the problem didn't exist. And in fact, Law New York has received several such complaints, as I found out recently, and I will be contacting their fair housing coordinator to discuss what they've seen and to see, how, if there's any way we may be able to work together or collaboratively or in support of one another. Tomorrow, we are scheduling a program called Emerging Changes in Fair Housing, which is co-sponsored with CNY Fair Housing, which is set to address federal, state, and policy changes, as I mentioned earlier. On Monday evening, we co-sponsored with a couple of organizations here, well, GIAC, as well as community leaders of color, a program called After the Verdict, to discuss not only the aftermath of and the implications of the decision in Minneapolis, but also, take into consideration the fact that, as Henry mentioned earlier, that there continue to be these killings of Black and brown people by law enforcement, notwithstanding that decision. And but also too, to have a larger conversation about how community members were feeling and experiencing the events of these days, and even beyond this the immediacy of this trial. And we had a really fruitful discussion, just a place for people to breathe and to process. And one of the things that emerged was that, there's a reality of racial battle fatigue among folks who have been engaged in efforts to promote justice and equity and diversity and inclusion locally. And that was something that we talked about, and it's something we want to look at how we might be able to address for the future. And then, as Amy Samchamavong mentioned, we're going to be co-sponsoring the programs on May 20th and 24th, programs that are really being generated by Hollaback and Asian Americans Advancing Justice on bystander intervention training. And so we have been in the process of working collaboratively with a number of community groups and others in terms of doing programming and promoting awareness. So I'll stop right there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Reverend Clark? Okay.
I just wanted to.
Oh,
Oh, I just want
yeah.
to say thank you, Dr. Clark, for your facilitation of the discussion. It was very, very challenging, especially the timing of things. And he did a great job of taking folks through that process. And so was good with space. And so it was something that we would only, a seasoned facilitator would be able to do. And so especially as tensions are heightened. So I appreciate him just taking the lead and taking care of those things and just being a partner in the work as well. So he did a great job. And I think people in the community really appreciated that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to human resources. Ruby and Lisa, I assume.
Hi, Henry. Oh, you know, we're one and the same, right?
It's all you, Ruby. It's all you.
It's all Ruby.
Thank you. And this will be very brief.
Okay.
Henry asked for an update from Human Resources, so I'm going to just hit on the major portions that are relevant to the committee. We are in the midst of the Chief Sustainability Officer search, hoping to have that done and completed by the end of May. We're at the beginning stages of the county attorney search and the county admin search. We will be regrouping and redoing the doer search. But one thing we've made the decision that for every search team, we're incorporating the implicit bias training in every orientation for search teams. For policy review, there's ongoing policy review and revisions along with Lisa and Jesse Spuds. We're starting with the policies that haven't been reviewed for 15 years or more. And I think we're knocking out quite a few of them. So those that are under human resources domain, that's the ones I'm starting with, in addition to any other that Lisa will forward my way. And as Deanna said, we're reviewing these policies from all perspectives. It's from HR, from equity and diversity, from operations. We're trying to include everyone in who has a say in the policy or has an aspect of it so that they can be comprehensive and complete. So that's policies. And we're also incorporating equity, diversity, and inclusion language in all directors levels and deputy director levels job descriptions. Then the last thing, and Henry, we're working on, Deanna also mentioned, and I thank her for it, the difficulty in pulling data, or I would say reliable data from our various systems. It seems like each department has a different method of coding data, has a different method of entering the data. So it makes it difficult when you ask for diversity metrics to pull it together a report. So we've already started that. I've asked for data over the last 5 years, including applicants, new hires, and our total workforce demographics by race, gender, and veteran status. So we're hoping to pull that together so that when we meet in May, just to review what we have, that we'll be able to give you that report we promised in June. So other than that, I'll leave the rest of it for day-to-day operations of human resources.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
We meet next in June, but.
Well, we'll have your report, but remember we're supposed to meet as a smaller group.
Right.
Review.
Okay. Yeah. Ann Coleman.
Thank you. Ruby, are you looking to try and help the departments codify their information so that it's easier to extract information out?
Right now, the major information we're looking at comes from human resources and payroll. If we can get that data entered in the consistent way and that we're filling all the blanks, then I think that will be the start of a source document. And from then on, if we need department information, we can add it. But until we have that source document of data, it's just another set of data.
And what are the metrics again that you're looking at?
We're looking at applicants, we're looking at new hires, and we're looking at the total workforce by race, gender, and veteran status.
Race, gender, and veteran status. So
those were the categories we were given And that will be broken down if we want to by department, by job group, EEO categorization, but those are the major components of the report.
Okay, I'm just wondering, so who was it that, who was it that asked you to get those?
The chair.
Category? Pardon me?
The chair.
The chair, okay.
Henry, you're right.
I'm just wondering for LGBTQ status.
And disability status.
And disability, just what else are we forgetting?
We can. I know disability status, we can, if that information is placed on the application. LGBTQ, I don't know if we capture that data.
And here's something that I'd like to know related to disability, which is the number of requests for reasonable accommodations is a way to look at what we're actually dealing with. Because if you look at the statistics, people who disclose on a voluntary form that they have a disability is a very small number. But I understand that the county deals with reasonable accommodations fairly frequently. And so if we do, it would be nice to know, because I've been trying to convince the county that making a statement about the kinds of reasonable accommodations that they've made over the years would be an effective recruitment tool, because if people with disabilities know the flexibility of the county, they're more likely to want to come join. But anyway,
let me check, because you're getting into some areas that we don't normally share.
Yeah, I know. I'm not talking about sharing people's individual stories unless people want to. I'm just talking about type of accommodations.
Okay.
But I had another question, if I could ask another question.
If Ann is done.
Ann, are you done?
Yeah, well, just one last thing I wanted to just to pose as a question. It doesn't mean something we have to deal with now or expecting you to deal with, Ruby, at this moment, at least, especially, but just wondering if we're asking people upon hire, especially with what Larry's saying, if, with somebody with a disability or other status might be disinclined to indicate that, even if we say that we're keeping that's confidential, people might be disinclined to share that upon hire. If there was some other confidential survey we could do some other time, just to take like a pulse of the of our workforce.
We'd have to talk about that and think about it. I know the accommodations can come at any time. Most times they don't request accommodations upon hire. It's usually after they've worked for a while and ran into some situations. But I'm not sure about sexual status or representation. I'm not sure about that. I think Lisa has her hand. You helping me out here?
Yeah, my hand was raised to respond to that. So, and this is a topic that's come up in previous years in WDIC, is that we have not to date asked an employee's sexual orientation anywhere. So that's a tough one to try to report back out on in any way. In terms of the reasonable accommodations requests, it's also something we've talked a lot about in this committee. And in 2020 marked the first year that the county had a reasonable accommodation policy, where we are actually handling, sorry, it's a long day.
It's a long day.
Handling those requests in a centralized way through HR. So in the past, I think Larry's right that there were a lot of departments who were handling those requests, but there was not really a way to track them, and it wasn't done in a formal fashion. And now it is being handled centrally through HR. However, I don't know that in the way that it's handled now, we're doing it in a way where we could easily track even just numbers or types. So all things to think about as we're moving forward. If we want these numbers to report back out on, we have to figure out a way to ask and capture that information.
So can I ask my last question had to do with the search process for the county administrator. I just think either somebody from this committee or somebody's from this committee should be involved in the search process, and or we should probably develop questions as a committee and submit them to, so that some diversity and inclusion questions and testing of the applicants is central to what we ask. I mean, because
we are having a meeting tomorrow night to discuss the search process for the county administrator. So we can raise the issue then.
Yeah, okay. I just think it's so important. I mean, Jason and before him, Joe really, it was a major part of their work to work with us and to try to move this forward. So we want somebody who has the skills and the ability.
Okay. And Ruby, can I just ask you one question? Okay. You talked about Larry Workman doing the recruiting. How is it going for him in terms of getting diverse candidates?
Henry, you're going in and out. I can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Larry Workman is working on the diversity part that Deanna's not working on. How's it going in terms of the searches?
What do you mean? How are we Larry is a recruitment administrator. He's determining what mediums we're advertising in along with the departments. So that's all he's really doing on that front as far as recruitment. If there are sites that, we have diversity sites, but he doesn't do anything as far as policy and determining where we're going with that. So what part is Deanna not working on?
So Deanna's working in the policy issues?
Yeah, wait, Larry is recruitment. He has a list of sites that he posts positions on.
Okay.
That's it. And if the department wants additional sites, then he adds those sites. He's just the liaison for posting the sites.
Wait, Ruby, let me make sure. So before we leave here without any confusion.
Yeah, you're the recruiter.
No, I'm not the recruiter, but I do work with Ruby and I have worked with Larry on strategy around what equity looks like in the work. Here's an example of that. And again, I'm not gonna be at your fair. I'm not gonna be calling candidates, none of that, okay? So I'm going to do the applications. They may see I see a posting and say, look at the language related to this for equity and make sure that we're hitting all the things we say we should have in policy. And for example, with the Reimagining Public Safety, we have the comprehensive continuous recruitment. So I worked with Larry and I worked with Ruby on the language around the budget and the money that we would need for the recruiting activities, recruiting for equity. And so I want to make sure we're clear. Yes, I work on them, but from a very structural and strategic level. But at the same time, if you're asking how many applicants of color received, how many veterans or anything like that, I have no idea. And I don't see information. So. But what I would say is if in 5 years, our metrics don't look the same, then in terms of our retention and recruitment, then we would say Deanna and Ruby get together on that. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. And next, Deanna, why don't you just give us a short update about Team Jedi? Because you were discussing what they're doing a little bit.
You want a long update? Thank you, Henry.
No, I want a short update.
So, yeah, there are 5 committees. They've shared their goals. And so I'm working with the communications committee right now to put out a communication to the organization. They actually have worked with our timekeeping folks to be able to provide equity updates in our timekeeping system. So if we want to say, come to something or do this, do this, want to provide information, we can do that now. And I thank Jen Olin and Shannon Albert for their work there. Then also, like I said, the last meeting we had on Monday, we didn't really make it to the agenda was folks needed to decompress. And so we spent that 90 minutes talking about the verdict, and folks had a lot to say, and they were very, very concerned. And the awesome thing about that space is that it's a very, very self-policing space. And so they really were very thoughtful, lots of listening. And so actually in terms of that, Rachel and Dr. Clark, would you chime in? Because I thought it was such a powerful conversation. I don't need to say more. You guys were there and you're part of the experience. Dr. Clark, you're on mute.
Dr. Clark?
Yeah, he's on mute.
Okay. Yeah, the meeting lent itself to that. I mean, the moment just kind of lent itself to that type of meeting in which people, really expressed their concerns, what they hope would come from the verdict, and really just kind of, it was very similar to the evening meeting, just with more people, a few more people, in which people really needed to just sort of have a space to converse. And, in a time like that, you shuttle the agenda that you had originally and move forward with that conversation. I thought it was a very helpful and important conversation. And I think it was particularly important for us as a group focused on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, to have that discussion and also to listen to each other. And what was important too about that conversation was that it really kind of really lent itself to complexity in terms of looking at the dynamics between Black and brown communities and law enforcement. It was a multifaceted conversation in that regard, and a deep one. That was one of the key elements among others of that conversation.
Yeah, and I would just add, there's some really unique perspectives from people that are on JEDI, because we have, people in marginalized groups on the committee. We also have people in public safety on the committee. We've got Matt Van Houten in the DA's office, and we've got Jen Olin from the sheriff's office. And so it's just important also to hear that perspective of everything that's happening also. And so it was eye-opening for me. And it's so important for us all to be sharing our perspectives, because they're all so different and unique.
Yeah. And what we then try to encourage people to do is just hold on to that complexity and sit with it. And it's okay. You don't have to solve the Rubik's cube here. This is what it is. And in that there's no easy address of this type of issue. But you have to kind of sit with it in order to determine how you deal with it and what contribution you can make to address
it. Okay. If I can request, Deanna?
Okay. Oh, no, I was saying thank you all for speaking up, because again, I facilitate and bring folks together, but really it's about you, it's about the employees. And so wherever they need to be is where we go. So.
If I can request another extra 5 minutes for the committee, just to get the 2 last speakers. And so the next person is Kip Kephart with an update of DSS.
Thanks, Henry. I'll talk fast because I have another meeting at 5, so I can't stick on much longer. But a couple of things that are going on at DSS right now. I think people are aware at this point that the guaranteed Code Blue season ended on April 15th. Our March numbers were really high for homeless folks that were utilizing Code Blue, but April has gone down some. Obviously, that guaranteed season ended mid-month, but we also have really been working very hard to get people transitioned from utilizing Code Blue over to the temporary housing assistance stream, which helps people that might have thought that they were going to utilize Code Blue temporarily, but their situation hasn't resolved, and so we want to make sure that they are still getting services and not finding themselves homeless again. So that's kind of a big transition at this time of year for DSS. Implicit bias training is underway currently at DSS. We've completed about 60% of the supervisors in the building have attended a training that we have coordinated with New York State or New York City, what's called ACS, which is essentially New York City's child welfare. Their child welfare team developed a whole module, a whole training, and we're utilizing one module on implicit bias. So this will be the second year in a row that we've done multiple efforts around educating around implicit bias. And Belisa Gonzalez, who everybody knows and is great, she's been doing debrief sessions from the trainings that people are, this module that people are attending right now. So I think that's, we're pretty pleased with that training and pretty pleased with those efforts. And everybody ultimately will be trained, but because there's 180 of us at DSS, it takes months to get through a big initiative like that. So we're just in process and kind of going through that right at the moment. The other things, just to kind of note, I think I've spoken with this group before, but I'm not positive. Continued implementation efforts are underway at DSS for our new initiative around what's called child welfare firewall and blind removals. So this is a very new approach around how we are working with families when a child might need to go into foster care, and there's some significant other milestones that need to be, some decisions around milestones that need to be made on a case. We're using a model where this is brand new. We just implemented this this year, using a model that was developed downstate that really involves removing all demographic, all racial related information when we look at a case and are making those decisions to make sure that we're really eliminating all the bias that we can and making, making good decisions, making equitable decisions without any, any bias is the hope. And really trying to eliminate any disproportionality in our child welfare decisions. So it's really a new model. It takes a lot more work to put, to kind of scrub the case, present it, have the team pull together at really key times and sometimes repeatedly, but we're really seeing good results with it, and I'm really pleased with it. The other side benefit is that when you pull together more and you are forced to kind of look at a case as a team, I think you get other benefits in terms of really all examining things a bit more and having more conversation and more ideas about how to work with families. So we're really pleased about that. And then lastly, I know Henry, you and I have corresponded a lot, but lastly, the other thing is we are actively in conversations with OTDA around the coming ERAP program, which stands for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We had a meeting yesterday about that. There's still a lot to learn, and there's a lot that OTDA doesn't know yet. But what we do know is that there is rental relief coming for people. It's an exciting program. They are telling us that the state is working on their portal, and they will be making all of the eligibility decisions around this program, but we are working very closely with them and we'll be rolling that out. They're telling us at this point that they anticipate that portal will be up and running probably close to the end of May. And I think right now there are some efforts on the table in Albany to probably delay the eviction moratorium going away. So I don't know if that will come through, but I think that's likely. So so that's kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah, I've heard that the moratorium that they passed it in one house, they're gonna bypass it in another house today.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, it would be great if we could get that program up and running before, you know, before we saw that eviction moratorium go away. So, but nevertheless, we are readying ourselves and doing everything we can to make sure that we're ready to roll. But we are dependent upon OTDA to help us get that, get the information and to be able to get things settled so we can get that started.
Okay. Any quick questions for Kit? Okay, hearing none. Sorry, Amy, I saved you for last on the values team.
I have to go, but
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Kit.
Hi, Kit. Yeah, so I will be very quick as we are over time, but the climate survey teams, Deanna mentioned, we're still closing out the 2018 climate survey and preparing for 2022 climate survey, which Deanna and Ruby are going to get pulled in on a little bit more. But one of those pieces was organizational values, and we have formally adopted them through a resolution. However, the rollout isn't just saying now we have values. It's much more than that. It's getting them not only posted in places, but as part of our culture and educating our employees on those values. So there will be more coming from that. Deanna talked about budgeting and, you know, having funds to do that. There will be some, you know, there will be some expense to that, and making sure that people understand not only are they words on a piece of paper, but they're something that we all live behind. So that's kind of the values update. The rest of the climate survey teams are starting to, if they haven't already, wrap up their work and hand it over. It's not like that work ends suddenly and they have final products, but they can start to hand it over to other places or working with other departments. So, you know, looking at engagement activities and onboarding activities, there's a department that is also looking at that. And so taking their findings and passing that along and moving the whole process forward.
Okay. Any questions of Amy? Okay. Well, then I think that we're done. I just want to mention that we all, okay, and just that we are working on the Juneteenth. It's now Juneteenth week as opposed to Juneteenth day. We're working on it. We won't meet until after Juneteenth will occur, but if people want to talk to me offline about it, I'm happy to talk to them about Juneteenth week. Ann Corman.
Since we're not going to meet till late in June, I'll also work on a resolution for LGBTQ Pride Month, which is June. And I just thought of another thing that we had for Ruby that we had looked before when we looked at demographics of whether people live in Tompkins County or not.
Okay, you have that, Ruby?
Sorry, Ruby.
Okay. Well, thank you for spending extra 5 minutes with us. And again, we don't meet until June, but we will be updating you offline. Thank you.